Bracing for an epic storm. The Northeast is preparing for what the National Weather Service warns could be a potentially historic blizzard. Up to 2 feet of snow threatens to blanket much of New England and the Mid-Atlantic, with the blizzard warnings in effect this morning and continuing throughout much of the day Saturday. We will have continuing coverage of the storm here on WSJ Live. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the News Hub. I'm Kelsey Hubbard. The storm's full intensity is set to hit about Saturday between 9 and 12. We are looking at about 20 to 30 inches of snow that will be blanketing the area we just discussed, much of the Northeast there, possibly New England, Boston especially getting hard hit. Apparently that is expected. Nearly 3,000 flights have already been canceled. This certainly will be a travel disaster for anybody looking to head out either on the roadways, or if you're flying, you certainly want to take precautions and check all flights before you leave the house. Certainly something everyone should do. The National Weather Service expects this winter storm to have near hurricane force winds and, of course, the significant snowfall we just talked about. Joining me with more on this epic storm is Brian Kahn from the Weather Journal. Thanks so much for joining me.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So first, I just want to say, a lot of times in the build up to some of these storms, we get a lot of hype. Is this storm expected to live up to that? I mean, we're hearing it could be, as I said, potentially historic.
I think at this point it's pretty safe to say that it is going to live up to those expectations. Initially, at the beginning of the week, there was a little bit of iffiness about what the storm's track would be and how much snow would fall, but as we've seen it develop over the course of the week, all the factors are coming into place to make this a pretty major snowfall, wind, and coastal flooding event.
All right, we're going to bring up a map here from NOAA right now. Tell me what we're looking at as we see this map.
Sure, so we're looking at wind speeds and wind direction here in this map over the course of the next, the map runs for at least 4 or 5 days, but you can see the red and yellow areas that are developing are the major part of the storm. So let's see if we can get back to the beginning of the loop here in a minute. You'll see that come up the coast. So here we go. So you can see it come up the coast, and right about this point, 9 o'clock in the morning, tomorrow we're going to see major winds off the coast of New England. It's showing it in knots, but miles per hour, we're looking at wind gusts up to 70 miles per hour.
So the storm is very hard to predict at this point. Could it shift significantly? Should we continue to watch this?
It seems pretty set. There have been a couple different model runs that have shown it moving a little further to the east, a little bit showing it a little bit to the west, but most tracks seem to indicate that we're kind of, especially Boston is right in the bullseye to get a major snowfall event. And
you're mentioning the wave heights. We, of course, in this area just had, with Sandy, significant surges on the coastal areas. Should we anticipate that as well?
We'll see big wave heights out in the ocean, and coming into the coast, we're expecting heights, especially a little further out to sea in New England, upwards of 30 feet. Coastal flooding, they're looking at 3 to 5 feet of water coming in, which is not Sandy heights, but it's still something to worry about for communities living on the coast, especially in the Boston area.
And Brian, how much can you anticipate at this point what the rest of the season will be like? We haven't had too much snow this year. Of course, Sandy was a huge storm that hit us back in October. Is this a harbinger for things to come, or is that unable to be known at this point?
It's not quite sure at this point as far as the season goes. This sort of, like I said, initially no one really saw this coming at the beginning of the week. It looked like a pretty minor event. It's transitioned to something bigger. So whether it's a sign of, a string of big storms or not is sort of up for debate, but I would say, just keep an eye on what the National Weather Service has to say in the coming months.
Right, and right now we're getting some snowfall here in New York. Is that expected to turn to rain? We're looking at Times Square right now. As you can see, it looks more like a rain event than a snow event, but expected to change, as you said, possibly tomorrow morning.
Yeah, actually when I walked in here this morning, just about 10 minutes ago, it started to shift over to rain. We should see that happen, but then about 3 p.m., that's when things are going to shift all the way back to snow, especially here in New York.
And when we look at a lot of these storms, as that we mentioned Superstorm Sandy in October, now we're anticipating the storm coming this weekend, a lot of people start talking about climate change. Does that factor into this? What do we know right now, or what at least is your opinion on that as we look at these storms that continue to hit us?
Well, Sandy had it does have a climate change signal in Sandy in the sense that, especially in New York, sea levels have risen about 1 foot over the past 100 years. So the flooding we saw from Sandy in many ways can be attributed to climate change. There's also a bit of a weird blocking pattern in the Arctic that steered it right towards New York. That's also consistent with having lower sea ice in the Arctic, which again is a climate change signal. This is a little bit different. What's causing this, the few climate change things you could pull out again are the coastal flooding could be a little exacerbated due to sea level rise. We're also seeing warmer than normal waters off the New England coast. That's a bit of man-made climate change. It's also a little bit of just sort of natural change that happens in those waters over the course of the year. So the answer is that climate change is certainly a factor. I wouldn't necessarily call it the only factor, though.
All right, and what type of snow can we expect with this storm? Sometimes we get that light, fluffy type snow. What are we looking at here? How do you determine and what we can expect?
Well, it's just based on the amount of the amount of moisture in the atmosphere is one aspect, the temperature is another. I think this storm, especially in New York, we're going to see some pretty heavy, chunky snow, so be ready to get the shovels out and get a back workout.
All right. Well, it'll be a big storm to watch. We appreciate you coming in this morning and giving us a preview and letting us know what to look out for, Brian. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.